Welcome to another edition of A Voice to the Gentile Church. I'm Jim Wingerter. Next to me is Pastor Roger Diaz. Next to him is Dolores Lowe. So Dolores, I guess we have to thank Joe Biden for putting a stick in the eye to Putin.
Yeah, I don't know how we're going to handle this, right?
Let's just cause World War III before
Exactly.
Donald becomes president.
Exactly. He's on his way out, and we know he's senile. So is it really Biden doing this, or is it somebody else behind him?
Right.
He basically gave permission for U.S. missiles to be launched into Russia, and he even said Moscow, which I'm like, are you insane? And
Do you want that question answered? I mean,
Well, he wants a nuclear exchange.
Exactly.
we keep saying he and Biden's not
Right.
Biden. The same people that provoked the whole conflict 20 years ago between Putin and the rest of Europe, threatening a reset and a new world order. The same people who are way beyond Biden. These are the people that are pulling the strings. Biden is a broken puppet.
Yep.
He's a broken puppet, and they can't fix him. They just have to retire him.
Yep.
So they were hoping for a new puppet, and that didn't quite work out.
Yeah, so supposedly, well, Russia admitted that Ukraine had launched 6 long-range missiles at them. My question is, it's not as easy as pushing a button, no matter what anybody tells you.
No.
So I can tell you the Ukrainians aren't the ones doing the launching. So the question is, who is doing the launching, right? Do we have Americans on the ground doing the launching? Is NATO on the ground doing the launching? And then everybody realizes we're on the verge of nuclear war, right? Because Putin said,
Sure.
this is now an escalation, and I'm gonna launch
Yep.
a nuclear weapon.
So something like that, and you understand a little bit about missiles and how they go. The protocol to set that whole thing in place must have began about a week ago.
Absolutely.
And they create the illusion that, Biden made the decision that there's too much destruction in the Ukraine and I'm just going to give them the go-ahead. But that's been planned. And the protocol beginning the process that ended up sending those missiles into Russia must have began shortly after Trump was elected.
Well, and
I mean, you do the timeline.
Sure.
and even
so-
when it was announced, he was in Brazil.
No, he was on his way. He announced it in D.C., and then he went down to Brazil.
Well, I don't think that he actually.
He's been talking a lot of smack in Brazil, don't get
Yep.
me wrong. But before he left for Brazil, he made that statement. But he also made that statement about 3 weeks ago. Then Trump won the election. Then suddenly, I believe that's when they put their protocol into place.
Yeah.
That's why he had that big grin on his face when he met with Trump, because he figured that he had an ace in the hole, which was the command of his rulers, the puppeteers, which is to go ahead with the plan. Because the globalists, I mean, we've talked about this on this program ad infinitum. The globalists has a plan to use this conflict that they invented between the Ukraine and Russia to initiate their Great Reset, their New World Order.
Yep.
And a nuclear war is all they need to bring this whole reset into existence.
Yeah, so we've closed our embassy in Kiev for fear of nuclear response.
Yeah.
The Finns have started telling their people what to do, how to survive a nuclear attack. And then
Finlanders.
Finland.
Yeah. And then today we authorized the use of anti-personnel mines
Yep.
on the
I
front
saw
lines,
that.
which is, we've been fighting that forever, right? From other wars, we try not to do that. All of a sudden, we're allowing it. So yeah, he's pretty much taking us to the verge of nuclear war.
He isn't. I mean, we know.
Or-
he is the
yeah,
puppet.
Yeah, this administration, let's say it that way.
He's the puppet.
Yeah.
That's an incredible statement. And we, being those who've been talking about this for a long time, we don't understand the full impact of the statement because we've been preparing for something like this. Our minds are open, have been open to it, but they are literally preparing a third world war that would be cataclysmic, that would be much more destructive, And it's like the whole world doesn't care. We're concerned about uh, political drama, which I'm so sick of.
Well, I read an article last week where NATO had said that they would not cooperate with Trump on ending the war.
Of course not, because they're being driven by these globalists.
But we fund all of NATO, really. I mean,
And that's why Trump
Just
shut
take
them
our
down
money
in
and go home.
16. That's
Yeah.
why he shut them down in 16.
yeah.
You see, there are people in this country that are in the know of what's happening. Trump is one of those people. Why? Because he has connections. The difference with Trump and many of the other people that are in the know is that Trump's prepared to try and do something about it. And I believe God's using him. But there's an evil agenda for humanity,
Yep.
and these people are not backing away from it. So Trump won the election, and Biden grinned from one side of his face to the next, and the puppet went ahead and initiated what we're seeing now.
Yep. So, as if it weren't enough that he's blown up the Ukraine-Russia war, he's on his way out. So now he's sanctioning Israel, all the settlers and the NGOs in Israel, claiming that they're really being terrorists, that they've stolen properties. And he's actually trying to use an emergency law in the U.S. I can't remember what the number of the law is, to justify his standing on this, right? Which is basically calling every settler in Israel, who they call settlers. You and I know they're not really settlers. They're people who have homes in what the West doesn't like. And he's sanctioning the NGOs. So similar to if you remember when Obama left, when he was the lame duck, there was that proposition at the UN, and we refused to in the past we would have put a stop to it, and we didn't do it. So they're doing the same book, right? The same playbook.
I have every confidence that had Biden, his administration, continue onwards with Kamala. I'm almost forgetting her name. That's a wonderful thing. With Kamala, their plan was to continue the agenda towards shutting down the West Bank, and not only in the worst possible way, sanctioning people that live there and function, but I know they were going to go after people in this country who would support the illegal West Bank, the settlements.
Absolutely.
I know that would have happened with everything in me, and I believe that before January, they're going to try and do something to implement that. They're desperate, right?
They are.
Listen, if this war were to break out in the Ukraine in a more intense way, with even the uses of nuclear weapons, listen, the globalists are going to activate, and they're going to attempt to put some sort of a global,
Martial
emergency act upon humanity.
Yep.
And that will keep Biden in office.
Yep. We saw that before with COVID, right? So now this is the nuclear.
So that will be there will be some sort of a justification to keep, just to put the American political position on lockdown. I just see these people desperate and willing to do desperate things.
Yeah. So Bibi on his own is trying to help calm things down. So this week he offered Hamas $5 million reward per captive. Go ahead.
Not Hamas.
I'm sorry.
Palestinians.
Palestinians,
Yeah.
$5 million reward per captive for every hostage that we can get back to freedom, and offered safe passage.
Safe passage to someplace.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
That's very important, because the reason I had to intervene there and say it's not Hamas,
Not Hamas,
is
but
because the Palestinians, the people, are beginning to distinguish themselves from Hamas. More and more, there's a cry in the streets of Gaza and Ashkelon and other parts of the area, just decrying Hamas. The people are saying they never want Hamas to rule them again. So there is a distinction that's beginning to occur, and that's a good thing. And I think Bibi offering that handout, quite a handout, but offering that opportunity for people to to be set free with a good pocketbook on the way out is, I mean, it's incredible. It's incredibly beneficial, and it's going to go a long way. Let's say people do step forward and reveal where the hostages are and be implemented in that whole thing. That's going to be a slap in the face of Hamas.
Yep.
Hamas is already on the verge of being destroyed, as is Hezbollah, and so I see that as an incredibly positive development, something that the people behind Biden attempted to prevent from happening. That was there, in Brazil earlier today, he talked about his advances in the war in Israel. He talked about his accomplishments and how he's going to accomplish peace with Hezbollah before he leaves office.
I have to give you credit that you actually listened to him, because
Yeah.
I heard a clip and it was mumble, mumble, mumble.
Yeah.
And then he turned around and walked off into the forest.
Well, no, I don't listen to him. I listen to the people who translate what he says. Yeah, I saw when he
Gibberish into English.
Yes.
I saw when he had his jungle gym shirt on,
Yes.
and he turned around and wandered into. I was wondering, why isn't there an anaconda right there? Right there. Where's a good anaconda when you need one? Huh?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So every president that we've had, the last 10 presidents, have wanted to broker a peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians.
This one is particularly heinous
Yeah.
because everyone in Israel know that the Biden administration, people behind him, despise the Jewish state, despise the war, and would love to see Israel fail. Everyone knows it, but then he's so blatantly turning his face in the other direction and espousing to be someone who stands with Israel. It's such a lie. And the point is, former presidents were better at lying, right? Bush and so on. They were better at presenting this facade of caring for Israel. But this administration, Biden, is terrible.
Well, that's because they have no choice, because, that left wing of theirs, that's all into, they're running
Yeah.
out in the streets, yelling from the river to the sea, not even knowing what that means, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think it's even beyond the left wing that's putting that pressure on. It's a political melee over there. It's a mess.
Oh, it's only because, so in the Ukrainian war, he's using the same tactics that were used in the Vietnam War, and we know how well we came
Yeah,
out of
that
that,
didn't.
right?
Yeah.
And in the Middle East, I don't think he even has a plan. He has no goal, no vision, no nothing, and it's just making a mess, right?
Well, the goal's clearly indicated, and it's been that way since Obama, which is to
Right.
empower
The
Israel's
Palestinians,
enemies
yeah,
and
the enemies. Mhm.
declare that part of the world to be the Levant, and Israel is no longer relevant, and that's the goal.
Yep. And speaking of Hamas and what wonderful people they are and how loving and caring they are towards their own people,
Yeah.
Hamas killed dozens of Palestinians accused of stealing humanitarian aid. So UNRWA had taken in humanitarian aid into Gaza. Amazingly, not arms as they've done in the past. This time it was actually a truck with humanitarian aid. And there are different tribal factions amongst the Palestinians, and some of them went and they're hungry. They want food, so they went and attacked the convoy and took, and then Hamas came in and killed dozens of them.
Yeah.
So,
And that's why there's a cry in Hamas in the Gaza and Han Yunis and in all those cities over there, all the communities over there, for the end of Hamas, because the people they're in bondage.
Yes,
and
they
they're
are.
crying out.
it is so sad because you can see photos of Beirut in Iran before the Islamic Revolution. And Beirut used to be called the Paris of the Middle East, right? People forget that.
Oh yeah.
That it was.
People forget that Lebanon was Christian.
Yes, absolutely. And look at the mess that they are right now, right?
Well,
It's
the
just horrible.
Lebanese are ready to assist Israel in dethroning Hezbollah. They're ready. They're ready. But the Lebanese government, the Lebanese military, the people are so subjugated by Iran and Hezbollah that they're in a tight spot. But more and more, the people of Lebanon are speaking out that they want Israel to succeed.
Yep.
Every interview I heard today and yesterday is clear. They are wanting Israel to succeed and do it quickly, decisively, so they can get on with their lives as Lebanese. Lebanon is a beautiful country.
Yes, it is.
Beautiful people. And to see this, it's a tragedy.
Yeah. So over on the anti-Semitic side, the Netflix has a new documentary coming out called Mary. And it's basically the story of Mary. The director has said that he is trying to be as faithful to the Gospels as possible. And in his attempt to be as authentic as possible, he casted Israeli actors for the role of Mary and the role of Joseph. And the left, as if they cared about Christianity and our faith or anything, is losing their mind.
So they casted a Scandinavian as Jesus. Is that true?
No, they tried to cast as many Israeli actors as possible.
So Israeli parents, Mary and Joseph, but a very Anglo-looking Jesus. Is that right?
No, for once
What?
they didn't
You
do
mean
that.
Jesus
For once they did not
isn't
do that.
Anglo? He doesn't have blonde hair and blue eyes?
Not blonde hair, blue-eyed Jesus,
Wow.
no. So the left is losing their mind.
It makes you wonder what it would take for them to not lose their minds over who's chosen.
Well, and one of the calls that they're making is that he should have casted Palestinians in the role of Mary and Joseph. I'm like,
Because the Palestinians are the original Israelites.
that's what they want to believe, yes.
What history?
What
Yeah.
a bunch of garbage.
So the entire primary cast of this documentary is all Israeli.
Sounds good.
Yep. So we shall see.
So is she Mary or Maryam?
Mary. They called her Mary.
Mary.
And then the Pope has spoken once again.
Ta-da!
Man.
The
can't
Pope
wait.
has spoken.
Bated breath.
Hear ye, hear ye.
So he is claiming that what is going on in Gaza is a genocide, and which has prompted some Holocaust survivors to point out to him that it is not a genocide. I don't understand this Pope. Well,
400 years of the Spanish Inquisition,
yes,
that was a genocide.
yeah, absolutely, and I mean it's just he's still lost in his Che Guevara motorcycle diaries, right? That's what's going on. He's still a communist version of Catholicism is what's going on. So
Spoken like a true Cuban.
yes,
He's a true Jesuit.
Yes, he
a
is.
Jesuit.
Yeah.
Yes, and he did. He claims that that's one of his formative books that formed his life was the motorcycle diaries that Che Guevara, one of the most evil people on the face of the earth, wrote, and that's one of his heroes. Really.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then in the good news front, just for Dale, I don't know if you guys remember, a few years ago, there was a pop star that filmed a music video in a church up in New York. And it was a blasphemous music video, right? It was just horrible. Well, the priest who sanctioned that, who said, okay, you can use my church, has now been relieved of all his duties by the Catholic Church. Now, he also had a secondary transgression in that he's caught up in that whole Mayor Adams and money being traded and all that other stuff that's going on. He's also caught up in that. But at least the church realized he needed to go.
So they're on thin ice because they've already released a lot of people for pedophilia.
Yep.
So they gave him the left hand of fellowship.
Oh, he
Gotta
deserved
go.
it. He deserved it.
Gots to go.
He worked hard to earn it.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Oh my.
So we have a question, and it's a good one. What does Damascus and Elam, which is Iran, have in common as it relates to end-time events in the Bible?
All right. So this, of course, you can't avoid the just how current this is, right?
Right.
Yep.
So this is very current and very relevant, of course. Many Bible prophecy people are talking about this, and it is a very, very, very difficult subject to address because The end of Damascus isn't so good. In fact, it's horrible. But the end of Elam or Iran is good, ultimately. So it's a difficult subject to deal with, and we've talked about this on the program before. We've heard many Bible prophecy teachers speculate that Damascus will be destroyed by a nuclear weapon, and it comes from some of the texts we're going to look at on this program. So we don't want to see such a thing. We don't want to see a nuclear weapon destroying Damascus. Damascus is the most ancient standing city that there is.
And a big city. A lot of people.
And yeah, a very crowded city. In fact, when you think of Syria, Syria itself, the hub of Syria, the essence of Syria is Damascus.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
Yep.
So Syria comes from the ancient Assyrian. So it's the environment around Damascus. Damascus is sort of the New York city of New York, right? There's not much else to New York but New York City, right? So Damascus, the most ancient of all cities in the world, not even in the Orient, that has very ancient cities, but Damascus goes all the way back to the time of Babel, 4,500 years at least, even beyond that. But Damascus has never been ruined, has never been conquered to the extent that its walls were breached completely and brought down. Never. The base of the walls of Damascus today goes all the way back to the time of Nimrod. So you're talking about a very ancient city that has never been utterly destroyed. The prophecies that we see is that it will come to a ruinous end. The walls of the city will be demolished, burnt to the ground. It takes a lot to bring a wall down, to cause a wall to melt, to be burnt to the ground, right? Stone doesn't easily melt.
Right.
So there is this prospect of some sort of a nuclear weapon in Damascus. That's dreadful. I'm sort of hypersensitive these days about what a nuclear weapon can do because it's being thrown around. Nuclear weapons are the talk of every, and we have to consider what they are. Putin said that they were going to revise their nuclear protocols, right?
Right.
Why?
Because
Because of the puppet Biden, the broken puppet Biden, echoing what his puppeteers wants him to say. So that's a horrible, horrible specter. The prospect of a nuclear weapon being detonated anywhere in the world. We remember Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and those were small weapons. Today they would be considered little nukes.
Yep.
Compared to what we have today. So now, before we get into this discussion about Damascus and Elam, we want to preface this by saying that we do not want to see a nuclear weapon used in Damascus. It's not something we want. Regardless, Damascus will be destroyed, according to the Bible, in such a way that seems to be pointing to something like that. Now, we'll talk about the connection between Damascus and Elam, Iran, Israel, and the West, the global hegemony people, and try and pull everything together to answer this question. So, we'll start off with Elam. There are prophecies in the Bible and the prophets, Isaiah primarily and Jeremiah, about the Elamite people. Who were the Elamite people? Well, they were the people that ultimately became the Persians, the Medo-Persian Empire. They were Elamites. Who was Elam? Elam was a son of Japhet, a son of Japhet that didn't go into Europe but stayed north of what is today's Iran, but ultimately grew into a mighty people and became the Medo-Persian Empire. Those are the Elamites. Now, Jeremiah is going to address the Elamites. In Jeremiah chapter 49, we see this. Now, there are, in Bible prophecy, fulfillment that's pointed back to the time of the prophet, contemporaneous to the time of the prophet's declarations. But some of those prophecies that goes back can also point forward into the future. And that's what we're going to see here with Jeremiah's prophecy. Now, Elam or or the Medo-Persian Empire was very relevant to Jeremiah, because Jeremiah was prophesying during the time of the destruction of Jerusalem, 586 BC, and a little after. God was preparing Babylon even then for its own destruction at the hands of the Medo-Persians. But then God was also planning out the Medo-Persians' destruction at the hands of the Grecians. So God was orchestrating all of the geopolitical events that will come that will occur in the future following Jeremiah's prophecy. So some of this is already fulfilled. But there is one prophecy here concerning Elam that points to the end of days that is not yet fulfilled, and that has to do with the throne of God, God's throne being established in Elam. And that points to end time events. So let's read that first in chapter 49 of Jeremiah, verse 38.
Then I shall set my throne in Elam, and I shall destroy out of it king and princes, declares the Lord.
Okay. So he's going to destroy out of Elam kings and princes. Now, you can say, well, that relates to, ancient Medo-Persian Empire. Okay. No. Yes, perhaps, and no. Because God did set a king in Persia who was reflective of his throne, who was Cyrus. Mm-hmm. So you can make that argument. But we're going to see here in a couple more minutes that he's speaking specifically concerning end of days. So verse 38 didn't reflect that, but we'll get to where that is pointed out. So the fact is, in 49 of Jeremiah, if you back up a little further to 35, verse 35 to 38, Jim, and if you can read that, we'll take it from there.
Thus says the Lord of hosts, behold, I am going to break the bow of Elam, the finest of their might, and I shall bring up Elam the four winds, bring upon Elam the four winds, from the four ends of heaven, and shall scatter them to all these winds, and there will be no nation to which the outcasts of Elam will not go. So I shall shatter Elam before their enemies and before those who seek their lives, and I shall bring calamity upon them, even my fierce anger, declares the Lord.
Okay, you read that. So we're going to read. I'm going to read verse 39 in a minute and put the cap on this, the essential cap on it. But what we're seeing here in 35 to 38 does relate to what happened with the ancient Medo-Persian Empire after Alexander sacked it. But there's a contemporaneous application. Now, some might say that this is also referring to what happened with Iran during the time of the Shah. Mm-hmm. How once the Ayatollahs, the Shiite Muslims took possession of Iran, that many of the people of Iran had to flee to other parts of the world. That you can apply that, but gingerly, because it is God who is creating the conditions under which. I refuse to believe that it's God who positioned the Ayatollahs necessarily for anything that would be relevant to his purpose. Nevertheless, he's speaking here concerning the time when he will begin to judge, to sort of sift Elam. And then in verse 39, but it will come about in the last days that I will restore the fortunes of Elam, declares the Lord. So, verse 38, God's going to put his throne in Elam after he destroyed their kings and their princes. So who are their kings and their princes as it relates to where we are today? The mullahs. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Ayatollahs. Yep. So he's going to bring down this evil rule in the midst of Elam, in the midst of Iran. He's going to destroy that leadership if you take it from that point of view. But then he's going to put his throne there. So what does that mean? Where is the throne of God going to be? Well, Jerusalem.
Yeah,
right?
Last place I would have thought of was Persia.
All of the prophets made it clear that God's throne will be in the midst of Jerusalem. Zechariah, Jeremiah, Isaiah, very vivid. So what are we seeing here? That God will put his throne there. It's simple. He's going to rule over Iran. His throne there being symbolic, of course, to the rule of his son. And this is what I believe. I believe that following the destruction of this wicked government in Iran, much of Iran will turn to Yeshua. It's already happening. This momentum is already building. And there are people in Iran that's crying out for such a thing. And ultimately, the people will prevail. The wicked government, the mullahs, are only so entrenched. After a while, they will be destroyed. So you know what happened when Israel struck them about 2 weeks ago.
Right.
They struck them in a very profound way, disrupted some of their nuclear ambitions, right? And illustrated very clearly, Israel did, with 100 fighters that went over, that they have the capacity to ruin Tehran easily. And so this was a tremendous blow to the kings and the princes of Elam. It was a shot across the bow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. The very definition of it.
A very close proximity shot across the bow, right?
Right.
Yes.
So God is speaking to Iran. He's speaking to the Elamites. And I think he's saying, I am preparing to establish my throne in the midst of you. So it's an incredible day that we live in when the armies of Israel are given hope to an entire nation that Jesus' throne can be established in you.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The people of Iran are on the cusp of a true, let's say, a Christian revival. And they're waiting for their government to be destroyed by whom? Primarily by Israel.
Right.
In order for them to have that freedom to live under the rule of this great king who will establish his throne in their midst. And that's the prophecy. Yeshua's throne will be established in the midst of Elam. But it also says here in verse 39 that he will restore the fortunes of Elam. And this God declares. And when? In the last days. So there's coming an end to the Elamite rule, the wicked rulers of Elam. When he will bring an end to their government over the people will then come under the rule, the throne of Yeshua, and this will be in the last days, and their fortunes will be returned to them. So you think of Iran in its golden age. I'm talking about, following World War II up to 1979.
Right.
Iran was a gem in the Orient. I mean, really, with such prospect, such horizon, until the Shah was taken out and the mullahs took over. So God is going to return their fortunes, even beyond that, because I am convinced that, judging from what I'm actually hearing and seeing in Iran and hearing from Christians, and knowing this text, that Yeshua is going to rule in the midst of Iran. And Iran is just waiting for Israel to clear away its evil leadership. It's a very unusual scenario that Israel has the opportunity to give freedom to an entire nation, like I said, so that they can make Jesus king. They're not going to go back to the ancient religion, Zoroastrianism.
Right.
Right.
They're not going to cleave to Shiite Islam because they've had enough of it.
Right.
They're not going to become Jewish.
Right.
So what are they going to do? That movement that's already budding is going to explode in them.
Right.
I'm convinced of it, and that might be a bit of maybe a prophetic statement, but it's in alignment with what we just read here about Elam. So Elam has a wonderful future. God's going to put his throne, which will be the throne of his son Jesus, the great king, King of kings, Lord of lords, Revelation 19, in the midst of Elam. I believe it's going to happen before Jesus comes. I believe it's going to happen before Jesus comes. Of course, when Yeshua literally, when he comes on the scene literally, that's when his throne is in Jerusalem. But he's going to begin to rule in many parts of the world. In other words, his throne will be established in many parts of the world. Okay, so as a congregation of people, you have the potential to have the throne of Jesus squarely in your midst, right? So let's talk about our congregation. We believe and we're convinced that Yeshua's throne is here. God has put his throne here, and we make him king. This is going to happen in many, many places before he comes and brings his literal throne. Okay? So I believe that they will surrender to Messiah's kingship, and God is preparing to bring an end to their evil government. And you can just see it. I mean, the mullahs, their connection to Russia, they're clamoring to ally themselves with China. I think ultimately China and Russia will not get involved in the reality that Israel will bring an end to their reign. It's going to happen. Just today, the mullahs, the ayatollahs, made a statement concerning Israel today that they are going to react to Israel, and they're 4 days away from creating a nuclear weapon. And they said that the statement was, we're going to attack Israel. We're not going to state how and when, but we're going to do it. At the same time, they're preparing nuclear warheads in the next 4 days. So what do you think Israel is going to do?
It's going to take them out.
Instead of the 100 fighters that went over, perhaps they'll send even more capable fighters and more of them. I think Elam is about to be humbled. What we just read there in chapter 49, what Jim read for us in verse 35 and 37 is what I believe is about to happen. I believe it's about to happen. So it's not something that we relish, wars and rumors of wars. We don't rejoice in that, but we know that it's prophetically applied, and today we see it so vividly. We know it's coming. We know it's happening. All right, so let's talk about Syria and Damascus. Again, when you say Syria, you're actually talking about Damascus. So there's a connection between Elam, Iran, and Damascus, right? Who's leading who in that relationship?
Right now it's Iran.
Right. And I don't think that's going to change.
No,
I don't think that's going to change. Syria, Damascus, again, it's not really Syria, it's Damascus. Damascus has no real girth, political girth, military girth in and of itself. All of it comes from Iran, the mullahs, right? The Shiite ayatollahs. And they are controlling, even subjugating Damascus.
yes.
Damascus has no choice but to go along with Iran, because Damascus is pivotal in Iran's ambitions to control Israel. That's why they're in Damascus, and that's why they're lever in Damascus the way that they are. So Hezbollah, which is an arm of Iran, the Ayatollahs, is very active in Damascus. We think of Hezbollah only in Lebanon, but that's not true. Hezbollah is active even in Venezuela.
Yep. They have a base.
So you wonder, Dolores, how is it that so many Trende de Agua gang members of that gang, has made it into this country?
Because Venezuela planned it and we allowed it.
but we know that Hezbollah has been very active in Venezuela with the government there.
Yeah, they have training camps in Venezuela.
Yeah. So think about it. Trende de Agua, this gang that they're not even from Caracas, they're from another place. I can't remember what tongue de Agua. I don't know. Aragua, I guess. I don't know. They came up from there in vast numbers. They came here to kill and to subjugate. Could they be an arm of Hezbollah? I think it's entirely possible. Now, why would they be allowed to come into this country? Because our government is corrupt and sold out.
Yes.
But Hezbollah is active in even Colombia, in Mexico.
Wherever there's some sort of destabilization going on, yes, they're there.
Even here in our wonderful community here in Orlando, the largest, most powerful mosque is a Shiite mosque. That's Hezbollah. When you say Shiite in the Western world, you're actually saying Hezbollah. Hezbollah is much more involved than what we're seeing right now in southern Lebanon. The front of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon is there to confront Israel, but Hezbollah is very active on behalf of Iran in Damascus. All right, so this is the issue now with Damascus. Damascus is under the yoke of Hezbollah vis-a-vis Iran, and there's nothing they can do about it. Very much like Lebanon. Lebanon is unable to do anything except hope and pray that Israel would destroy Hezbollah. And that's what I heard today in two different interviews. The good Lebanese people are wanting Israel to finish this job. Mm-hmm. You know, when we were praying a few months ago, someone prophesied and said that there's a serpent. There's a serpent in the Middle East. Its tail is in Gaza. Its body is in Syria or Hezbollah. Its head is in Iran. So Israel now is destroying the tail and the body and is beginning to prepare to destroy the head, who is Iran. And I believe that that's happening. So let's read concerning God's word now to Damascus. Again, there is this relationship between, it's not even a symbiotic relationship, because Damascus does not have anything to offer to Iran or Elam except submission.
Right.
Except we will do what you want us to do. So it's not symbiotic. It's a very, very subjugating type relationship. And I believe that there are many Syrians, but they dare not speak, that would love to get out from under the yoke of Elam. So we're going to talk about God's judgment upon Damascus, and it's not good. What's the population of Damascus? Maybe that's a good... I think the population of Damascus is much more than the population overall of Syria. In other words, there's not much to Syria other than Damascus in terms of population. So,
absolutely, yeah.
So you have this incredible situation where Damascus is prophesied in the Bible by 3 prophets in a most horrible way in terms of its judgment.
2.6 million.
2.6 million. What's the population of Syria? That will give us an idea. 2.6 million people in one city, one Middle Eastern city. You can understand perhaps New York or Sao Paulo, or, but in the Middle East, that's a large population
New
for
York
one.
Is 7 million.
Yeah.
So the complete Syrian population is 25 million.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Well, so Syria is a vast landscape.
Yes, it is.
A vast landscape. It goes all the way up into Turkey and down into Iraq and down into Lebanon. So you have this situation now where Damascus in the Bible comes to a ruinous end. And we're going to read about this now. I'm going to submit to you that Syria or Damascus's end has to do with its relationship to Iran. The first reference that we're going to see here is in chapter 49 of Jeremiah, which is where we read about Elam. So right before God's oracle, the oracle of Jeremiah to Elam, right before that, he spoke concerning Damascus.
Right.
So it's as if, from the standpoint of the prophet, he is speaking concerning Damascus, and then he's quickened right then to begin to address Elam. That's because of this connection between them that exists today. He's speaking to Damascus concerning the destruction of Damascus, and then he puts his emphasis on Elam. It's as if the prophet understood that the cause of Damascus's destruction and judgment is actually the Elamites, Iran. So let's read that, Jim, in chapter 49.
Verse 23.
23 to 27, if you can.
2:27. Concerning Damascus, Hamat and Arpad are put to shame, for they have heard bad news. They are disheartened. There is anxiety by the sea. It cannot be calmed. Damascus has become helpless. She has turned away to flee, and panic has gripped her. Distress and pangs have taken hold of her like a woman in childbirth. How the city of praise has not been deserted, the town of my joy. Therefore, her young men will fall in her streets, and all the men of war will be silenced in that day, declares the Lord of hosts. And I shall set fire to the wall of Damascus, and it will devour the fortified towers of Ben-Hadad.
So this is that fire that will bring destruction upon Damascus. We know that this prophecy is yet to be fulfilled because this has never happened. Not in the history of Damascus.
So when Bashar al-Assad turned to Iran, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was because the Clinton administration was claiming that they were using weapons of mass destruction, and he knew that he would lose his position. And that's kind of descriptive of what he did. He panicked. That's why he turned to Iran. So it could be already in the works, right? The beginning of it.
Well, yeah, when the Shah of Iran was driven out of Iran, the mullahs began to extend their tentacles into the surrounding countries. Iraq stood against them. Iraq said, "You're not gonna." They were Baas. They were of the Baas party, and they were Muslim Brotherhood. They were Sunnis, and they didn't want this Shiite element affecting them. So they said no.
Right.
And they went to war against each other and stuff. But Iran hopped over Iraq and went to Syria.
Yep.
And Syria was more entertaining of the Iranians. They had all the oil in the world.
Yep. And they needed protection.
And the Syrians weren't so they weren't so deeply Islamic to make that distinction so effective between the Shiites and the Sunnis. So they were more open to the Iranians, and that relationship goes all the way back. Before even the time of the Shah of Iran. Well, mostly after the Shah of Iran. So this relationship is there. It's been there. And Ben-Hadad, he, of course, we know his most recent behavior. He did use weapons against his own people, chemical weapons and so on. But he had the go-ahead from Iran. And this is during the time of Obama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the accusation started with the Clinton administration.
Way back in the 1990s.
Because it was Hillary, right? Hillary's little tentacles doing her thing.
Well, yeah. So it's amazing that that even with the Clinton administration, they had influence with Islamic governments, with Islamic oppressive Islamic rulers. That's amazing.
Yeah, they did a similar thing with Libya, right?
They
destabilized Libya.
We came, we saw,
Libya.
he died.
Yep.
That's Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
So why did they go after Muammar Gaddafi? Because he wanted to establish a gold standard for all of Africa.
Right.
And the French wasn't having it. And so the European Union commissioned Hillary, the administration, Obama administration, to do something about it. And they did. Anyway, so now let's talk about Damascus again. Will be a complete ruin in Isaiah chapter 17, 1-3.
The oracle concerning Damascus. Behold, Damascus is about to be removed from being a city.
All right, so we know that, that's never happened.
Right.
And the idea that it's going to be removed from being a city creates a picture of obliteration, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Its walls are going to be burnt to the ground.
Yep.
Its people will flee. There will be great anxiety. Their soldiers will be left dead in the streets. Go ahead.
And it will become a fallen ruin. The cities of Aroer are forsaken. They will be for flocks to lie down in, and there will be no one to frighten them. The fortified city will disappear from Ephraim, and sovereignty from Damascus, and the remnant of Aram, they will be like the glory of the sons of Israel. declares the Lord of hosts.
So there's a lot there we can talk about. First of all, the flocks are not stirred up by anyone because there's no one there.
Right.
That's the implication of that statement. No one is there. The place is made void of people.
No wolves, no jackals,
Nothing is there. So, secondly, it's in the territory of Ephraim. Now, we know that the half tribe of Manasseh and Ephraim. Manasseh was that tribe that went on the Golan, on the east side of the Golan, right?
Right, right.
So, why is Damascus in the territory of Ephraim? You see, we know from based on the land, the territory that was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that Damascus is a part of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
The Israel that's promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So perhaps from God's point of view, he's seeing Damascus as being in the future territory of Ephraim, because it says it there in the territory of Ephraim. So the prophecy is shocking, right? There's going to be a complete end to Damascus. It will no longer be a city. It's massive. Damascus is massive.
So why?
2.5 million people.
Mm-hmm. So why do you think this disparity in the way God treats Iran versus Damascus or Syria?
Well, we'll get to that here in a few moments.
Okay.
That's based in the realm of speculation, which we'll talk about. So Amos had something to say as well. Now, who's Amos? Amos is that prophet who spoke shortly after the time of Isaiah, but before Jeremiah. Amos spoke primarily to the northern kingdom. He didn't speak concerning Judah. He was of the tribe of Judah. Amos was from the region of Judah. He was from Tekoa.
Yeah.
He was a prophet, and he was a Jew, a Judahite. And he spoke concerning Ephraim, the northern kingdom. And he didn't have much good to say.
No.
Amos and Hosea, they were both prophets to the northern kingdom. The difference between Amos and Hosea is Hosea was of the tribe of Manasseh, I believe. But he was of the tribe, he's one of the northern tribes. So Hosea was much more compassionate in what he had to say. God used Hosea to speak incredible comfort to the northern kingdom. But not Amos. Amos was harsh, but he was also harsh on the surrounding nations, and he spoke in the first chapter of Amos concerning Damascus. So let's read what he said.
Thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Damascus, and for 4 I will not revoke its punishment, because they threshed Gilead with implements of sharp iron. So I will send fire upon the house of Hazael, and will consume the citadels of Ben-Hadad. I will also break the gate bar of Damascus, and cut off the inhabitant from the valley of Aven, and him who holds the scepter from Beit Eden. So the people of Aram will go exiled to Kir, says the Lord.
So who are the people of Aram? Those are the Assyrians, or those are the Syrians. Syria today is a people that descended directly from the Arameans. Their historic language is Aramean. So that prophecy from Amos is very much reflected in what Jeremiah said, right? Very, very close to what Jeremiah said.
Yeah, they're in agreement.
These 3 prophets, even though they prophesied at different times, they're all consistent on what will occur in Damascus, a complete end. Citadels will be burnt to the ground. How does that happen? The place will be a complete ruin. There will be no one there. There will be no life there. And this has prompted many people to speculate concerning a nuclear weapon. Now, I say perhaps not. No one wants to see a nuclear weapon destroy the entire city of Damascus. When Hiroshima and Nagasaki was bombed by the U.S., those bombs did not bring a complete ruin to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Huge blocks of the city was destroyed completely. But we're talking about weapons today that can literally wipe Damascus, as large as it is, off the face of the map complete. Because we have weapons like that today, right?
Yes.
You know. So the idea of a nuclear weapon being detonated in Syria is horrifying, but it seems to be what lies in its future. Now, let's begin to speculate now. Why would that happen? Why would it happen in Damascus and not in Tehran? It's clear from the biblical review that it's not going to happen in Tehran. God's simply going to place his throne in Tehran, in Iran or Elam. That's what we see. But he's going to bring a complete end to Damascus. So Israel is prepared to respond to Iran's nuclear ambition. So there's a sort of a chess game happening here, and Israel is a master chess player. Iran is just the dopey chess player. All right? They're just bumbling and stumbling through the game, hoping for some sort of a miracle to occur on the board, and they don't have a plan. They don't have moves set or anything. But Israel is that master chess player. So Iran now is saying, oh, we will have a nuclear weapon in 4 days. We'll have enough uranium to create bombs in just 4 days. That's what's coming out of Tehran. So Israel knows how to make the next move, right? Israel is positioning her pawns and her knights and putting them in place for what's to be done next. And of course, Iran is going to lose a few players.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if they're all in place already.
No doubt. Now, according to what we see in the Bible, the leadership of Iran is completely destroyed. The headship of the mullahs, the ayatollahs, are going to be put down, and the people will rise up. Because it says it there in Jeremiah, right? God's throne will be there, and he's going to restore them to their fortunes, and he's going to give them favor. So, not so with Damascus. The prophet Isaiah bemoans what will happen to Damascus, right? He says the city of joy, my city of joy, and it's coming to an end. All right. So, if Iran is to launch a nuclear weapon into Israel, it doesn't have the technology to do so from the air. I think more than likely they will they will attempt to bring a nuclear weapon into Israel from the north, which is the only route into Israel coming from the north, which is through Damascus. You know, Damascus in ancient times has always been that stopping point before you come into the land of Israel. Abraham, before he came into Israel on that King's Highway, he stopped at Damascus. Same with Jacob. I believe, and this is speculation, but I believe it's entirely possible that Iran will attempt to drive a nuclear weapon into Israel somehow, you know, without using, you know, space technology or from the air, because I don't think they have that. I think Israel is going to obliterate their potential to do so, and I think they're going to try and detonate a bomb in Israel from Damascus. And there's a good, distinct possibility that it will go wrong.
Yeah, I know that a few years ago, I know for a fact they didn't have a delivery mechanism. And my theory was always they're going to launch with a bad delivery mechanism, and it's going to wind up in Damascus instead
possibly. But I think Israel is going to be this chess game that Israel is playing with Tehran. The next move is Iran's going to lash out, and Israel is going to completely obliterate their nuclear potential, completely. And the next thing for Tehran is to drive a truck into Israel, or send a container shipment into Israel.
We have suitcase-sized nuclear bombs now, right?
So I see something like that happening. Another scenario is that Tehran attacks Israel from Damascus with some sort of a nuclear weapon, you know, a drone, who knows, I'm not sure by what means they can do it. Then Israel, that's another possibility. Israel would be that agent that will destroy Damascus. I don't believe so. I believe entirely that if Tehran or Iran were to attack Israel with nuclear weapons, that Israel would respond in Iran. But I don't think Iran will ever be able to do it, because I'm convinced that Israel will take their pawns and their bishops and their knights before that happens.
I kind of question their 4-day timeline, because we know that Israel attacked their nuclear capabilities last month. So
it's all position. It's all bluff. It's
Right.
all, acting as if you have a queen when you don't.
Right.
And so I think it's entirely possible that we can see such a thing. And that's a dreadful prospect. And what do we do? Where does that put us? Well, I think we have to continue to pray for the Elamites, people of Iran, the good people of Iran, that God is preparing to restore their fortune and bring them to a place where he can have his throne in their midst. Doesn't say he's going to have his throne in the midst of Damascus. Damascus is coming to an end, whether we like it or not, a ruinous end. Mm-hmm. And so Damascus is slated for destruction, whereas Iran is going to be the place of God's rule.
So when you look at Iran, there is certainly on the ground, there is a movement for freedom, right? They've had several uprisings. The mullahs have killed a bunch of people, happens all the time. And you don't really see that in Syria, right?
No, you don't see much hope for Damascus. You don't hear of anything redeeming coming out of Damascus. Right. Why? Because Damascus is horribly subjugated. Damascus is like a city that's, again, set for nothingness, because there's nothing good that comes out of Damascus. Missionaries are never allowed into Damascus, and it's just a terrible place. You have Iranians in the diaspora of Iran that's out here in the world clamoring for Israel or the United States to put an end to their wicked government in Iran. But then you have some powerful evangelists coming out of Iran. Powerful. I can think of a few right now that are out here in the world, speaking concerning what they believe is coming for Iran, which is, again, the rule of Messiah in their midst. They believe that, and not only because of the prophecy that's stated in Jeremiah chapter 49, they believe it because that's what God has been leading them to believe and to embrace. So this rule of Christ in the midst of Iran is inevitable as the destruction of Damascus. That's a dreadful thing to speak out, but it's what we've seen in the Bible. So the connection between Damascus and Elam is terrible. But ultimately, God will rule in the midst of Iran, and his throne will be there. And the prayer is that he would do this. And this is our responsibility as believers, to pray in that way, to believe for such a thing. And not just in Iran, but in many parts of the world. I believe his throne is being set up, established in many places. Certainly in places like Brazil. There's such a strong move of believers in Brazil that love Israel, that are, you always know where the throne of Messiah is being set up, because there are Christians, believers, that are crying out concerning Israel. Here in our little community, it's happening here. His throne is here. But it's happening on a much larger scale in many places, in Pakistan, in the Philippines even, in China, in South Korea. We need to pray for the people of South Korea. They're clamoring for salvation for the North Koreans, but they're also clearly working towards establishing the throne of Messiah, Christ, in South Korea. It's happening in many, many places. So the throne of Christ is being set up in many places. And of course, ultimately, he will literally come and take that rule, that throne, all the way to Jerusalem. And that's the scenario. But in the meantime, it's incumbent upon us who have that rule in us, the rule of Messiah in us, that throne in us, with us, to begin to intercede. And begin to really burden ourselves for the places that I mentioned, like Iran, the Philippines, China, Korea, many places, Brazil. And, there's such a powerful movement in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Out of the ashes and the heap of sorrow that Sao Paulo is, you have this incredible movement of people that are crying out to Yeshua, that are clamoring about Israel, supporting Israel. They had a rally in Sao Paulo. 1 million people got out and rallied for Israel, a few months ago. So the throne of Christ, God's throne, is being set up in many parts of the world, and it's incumbent upon us to really begin to intercede like this and for this, because it's happening. It's an exciting time. It's a profound time. It's an awesome time. The thought of World War III, the thought of nuclear weapons being used, and the fact that the Bible seems to pinpoint Damascus might indicate that there would be a weapon used there, yes, but perhaps only there. We hope so. I'm convinced that the Great Reset people, the New World Order folks, they are clamoring, they are hankering, I should say, to use a weapon in the Ukraine or Russia so that they can implement their New World Order. That's all they need to put that whole thing into effect. But perhaps God will not allow it. Perhaps he's going to restrict this whole thing for his purposes so that he would be glorified in all of this. We don't know. We don't know the actual scenario, but we do know that we live in precarious times, dreadful times, really. Wars and rumors of wars. Men's hearts failing them for what's coming in the earth. And we're certainly there. It's surreal. I remember back in the 1970s, as a teenager, considering a nuclear war between the United States and Russia, how ominous it was, right?
Yep.
Shortly before then, Cuba was in the play.
Right.
There was this standoff between Russia and the United States from Cuba. It was a dreadful thing for me growing up in the Caribbean. As a kid, it created a lot of anxiety. I remember that very well.
You didn't have to be in Trinidad. We were anxious here on the mainland.
Well,
too.
yeah. Well, in Trinidad in the Caribbean, we knew that that Castro had his tentacles in places like Grenada, and even in Trinidad, in the north coast of Trinidad, there were Cubans coming ashore on the north coast of Trinidad, and the idea was that they were going to come in and begin to infiltrate the communities and bring Castro into Trinidad. So there were lots of anxieties back then about nuclear exchanges and the Caribbean, the whole world being engulfed with nuclear war. I pray that doesn't happen. I feel like it will not happen. Jesus speaking concerning these days, a time unlike any time before or after it, but because of the elect, these days will be shortened. Right? So he spoke about wars and rumors of wars, birth pains, and all these things. And then he makes this incredible statement. A time unlike, listen, a nuclear war, a full-out nuclear war, is certainly a time like no other time.
Right. Right.
I mean, think of the destructiveness.
And the fallout.
Or the fallout is what's...
Not just what gets blown
Right.
up, but the
those
radiation.
who die in it are the lucky ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are the blessed ones. But I am convinced, and this is my hope, that Jesus was correct in saying that these days will be shortened. Otherwise, he said, no one will survive. That's what he said.
Right.
No one will survive. So because of the elect, these days will be shortened. And that brings to bear here the responsibility of the elect. Who are the elect? Well, we would maintain that the elect, the churches in Israel, but we're focused on the church. We're not going to put that on Israel at this point. We'll look to ourselves. The church is the elect. So we have a very important role in this awesome time that Jesus spoke of. Because of us, because of our ministry, because of our intercession, our activity, these days will be shortened. So rather than looking for a way out vis-a-vis the rapture, see yourself here for a purpose.
Right.
You're the elect. And because of the elect, these days will be shortened. Otherwise, no one will survive. So we have a function, we have a purpose, and we shouldn't look for an escape. That's my contention. It's been my contention for a long time.
Sure.
Other than the fact that the whole pre-trib rapture escapism is just unbiblical.
Right.
I mean, absolutely unbiblical. It's based on a fictional book. So, yeah. Who wrote the late great Planet Earth? We know who.
Yep.
And it was a fictional piece
Right.
based on the Moody Bible commentary on Bible prophecy. So we know how that came into existence. No, my book, my passage for Bible prophecy is Matthew chapter 24, and that clearly indicates something entirely different. It states that the elect will have responsibility here while this thing is happening. It's going to come to a climactic point, the brink of destruction, and because of the elect, the day is shortened. And then he comes. Right before things go completely bonkers, he comes.
You know, for us, I think it's a little bit easier because we are used to praying and seeing answer to prayer. I mean, that happens all the time here, right?
Yes.
And I think a lot of congregations out there don't put the emphasis on prayer and therefore don't get the results.
It's tough because if there isn't the faith
Right.
behind it, then the prayer is not going to be answered.
So, yes, you're right. You're correct. And Jesus, in training his disciples concerning faith, he said over and over, if you had faith like a mustard seed, right?
Yep.
You would say to that tree, be rooted up and be thrown into the sea. And Peter, walk on water. He is wanting his disciples, who we are, to exercise that type of bold faith, that type of in-your-face devil-type faith.
Right.
I know of a prayer group that's been praying every Wednesday night, and from the very beginning of this prayer group, these meetings, and they started praying in the next week after October 7th, a year ago. A constant cry in that prayer group was, God, expose the evil of this country. Expose the evil elements on the left. Humiliate them. Bring them to light. Shine light on them. And that prayer has been going out now in that prayer meeting week after week after week. Look at what happened in the last month.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, the political corruption in this country is being exposed.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have the faith to believe like that? Have that type of mountain moving faith? Well, we're supposed to. Jesus wanted us to have that type of faith. Would we step up? We're the elect. We're here for such a time as this. Would we step up and have that type of bold faith that, God, you can use us to change the course of this evil government that's planning to destroy humanity? They are a cult of death.
Mm-hmm.
The globalists, the reset people, the New World Order people, they are a death cult on a level never seen before. They have hopes to destroy 95% of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
From 7 billion to 500 million.
Yep.
Is my percentage just about right?
Yeah, you're right.
Close to it. That's their goal. You're talking about a cult of death, a cult of destruction beyond anything we've ever seen in humanity. This is the devil's great push. It is absolutely his great push. And God is saying to us, Matthew chapter 24, that the elect will be the catalyst by which this thing will be stopped. Could we believe such a thing?
We have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's what we've been assigned to do.
Or do we think that's illusions of grandeur? What do you think? No, we don't think it's illusions of grandeur. We know that this is what God expects from us.
Right.
He expected that from his disciples. Jesus rebuked his disciples whenever they wouldn't reflect that type of faith.
Right.
He expected that from them. Mm-hmm. What did he do when they went out and they cast out demons and they raised the dead and they healed the sick and they came back to him? What did he do? He rejoiced greatly
In the Holy Spirit.
in the Holy Spirit
Yes.
because he saw Satan's kingdom crash to the
Crashing
ground
to
like
earth.
lightning. We want that to keep happening.
Yes.
We want that to be repeated over and over and over, and He has given us the power to do it. We have to enact it. We have to mobilize. We are the elect. These days will be shortened because of us. Horrible things are on the horizon for humanity. Think of Damascus. What an end to such an ancient city. Well, this is what the Word of God says. But praise God, the people of Iran, the Elamites, will be restored. The rule of God's throne, being Yeshua, will be established in them. We're seeing the horizon that will usher in this millennial kingdom. We're seeing it. Through all of the troubles that we see today, wars, rumors of wars, tribulation, all of the foreboding signs that we're seeing today, birth pains, we're seeing that horizon. And beyond that horizon is the rule of Messiah in the earth. Mashiach is coming to rule in the earth, to establish Israel as the leading nation, and to put down rebellion, and to raise up the nations around Israel where his throne will be established. This is what's happening. It's a wonderful time to be alive, awesome time, fearful time. Just today I was doing some work, and while I was working, I was listening to all these different interviews and reports, and it's shocking how horrible things can get. Mm-hmm. World War III, nuclear war, Biden poking the stick on behalf of the globalists. Listen, the globalists have been wanting this conflict between the Ukraine and Russia for decades. They've been setting this thing up, and now they have it. Trump won the election, and so suddenly they put their protocols in place to have missiles launched into Moscow.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone forgets
Moscow
that
shut
it was
down the missiles.
Yes, except for one, and it didn't do any real damage. But people forget that when Russia went into Crimea, Obama did nothing.
Well, of course,
he wanted
Obama
to set this up.
He was the quintessential puppet of the new World Order people.
Yeah.
He was just a much smoother puppet.
Right.
He knew the chessboard a little better than Biden, and so here we are.
Yep.
Awesome times. It's a time for us to really, as they say today, lean into God. I love that statement that we find in the Bible in several places. Draw near to me, and I will draw near to you. Well, lean into Him, and He will lean into you. Mm-hmm. He will use you. You will become His vessel, and you'll be an instrument in His hands. And that's where we are today. And we need to really press in. This is that time.
Well, that's our program. And if these questions raise questions in your thinking, please share them with us. You can present those questions to us easiest by email by sending us an email to voice@buildupzion.org.
Also, Jeremy Gimpel will be here.
Okay,
good. You got it.
We're also hosting a meeting on Sunday night, December the 1st at 7 p.m. with Rabbi Jeremy Gimpel. We have a long history with Jeremy and his friend Ari. We met them, I'm going to say like 20 years ago now. It's been
no, more like 2007 is when we began to really build a relationship.
So
with
shy
them.
of 20 years, but not too much shy.
Right.
Yeah.
And they did a program out of Jerusalem called Tuesday Night Live from Jerusalem, which obviously takes its name off of Saturday Night Live. But their program wasn't comedy. Their program was faith-based and out of Jerusalem. And since that program ended, they put their resources together and established a farm and a learning center in an area. We were just talking about the prophet Amos.
Cool.
And that area is called Ma'ale Amos, meaning the ascent of Amos. And it's a little farm called Gan Arugot. Gan means a garden or a farm. And Arugot is like a weave. So you see how you get an orchard concept out of that. A bunch of trees in a beautiful location in the Judean wilderness. It's not even wilderness anymore. God's caused it to rain, and it's flourishing. So you can come and hear Jeremy. There's a QR code on the bottom of your screen offering you an opportunity to search for more information. And until next week, shalom.